Welcome to the show. This is Arseni Talks.
So by that time, I was 1 foot in art and 1 foot in architecture, and I stayed there, walking
And
sometimes one the other.
what were the project publications are you working this time?
Oh, now, oh my
No,
goodness!
no, no. That time, sorry, that time.
At that time,
Yes.
well, I wrote first of all in the final year at art school. We had to write a dissertation, and I wrote one that I only finished afterwards because it was so big, 66,000 words. It's like a PhD, but
Wow.
I did it in 12 chapters with an index, and it was a history of abstract painting. Because I was very interested in how abstract painting happened. Why did it start? And what are the problems around it? Uh, I was particularly interested in Kandinsky, not because he was my favorite artist. My favorite artist was Paul Klee, who was with him in the Bauhaus. But Kandinsky represented to me a problem about abstract painting, which I think is still not clear. Like, how do you, if you don't paint objects, well, how do you organize your picture? Do I put a blob up there and a blob down there and another one there? What's the motive?
Mhm.
Um, And this began to puzzle me. How do you compose an abstract painting? Um, Secondly, I thought that by that time, which was in the late 1960s, 1970, more or less all the possibilities had been initially discovered, even if you could go on doing them in many ways and variants. But it was like as if everybody had finally sailed around Africa. Nobody knew what was in the middle of Africa, but they knew how big it was. And I concluded that abstract painting had become a bit like making pots in ceramics. We're still making pots after thousands of years, very beautiful ones,
Yes.
like Chinese pots especially, but it's a craft almost. It's no longer a research vehicle. Um, Things have happened, of course, to extend that, like installation art. So that was one thing I started with. And then I became really dependent on the connections I made. I made friends with a great photographic artist named John Steziker.
Mhm.
He never took photographs, but he cut up photographs. I wrote the first thing I ever really published properly was in German. He had an exhibition in Switzerland, and I wrote the introduction. And then I started writing for journals because when my grant finished, I had to find a way to make a living. So I wrote all these articles.
Yes.
I've written about 350 articles.
Yeah, I've read that in '99 you published the problem of our walls in Journal of Architecture.
That's one of the best things I wrote. Yes.
Yeah, could
Yeah.
could, could you tell me about this a little bit?
Well,
What's the main idea of it?
the essay started because there was at that time, this is the 1990s, big interest in a French writer named Georges Bataille.
Mhm.
And Bataille, uh, he was very close to the Surrealists, although he didn't really get on closely with them. He thought they weren't very radical.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of uh, a kind of enemy of André Breton, the great Surrealist leader. And he didn't like architecture. He claimed this. He said, architecture is a, a kind of prison.
But I.
I, yeah, Bataille said this. He said, that when we start building walls around us, we're already enclosing ourselves. And he was a kind of anarchist. And the interesting thing about the word wall in English is that it is the palindrome, backward of the word law. Wall, law. You reverse the word. So a wall is a law, and a law is a wall.
Yes.
And I was asked to take part in a issue of the journal with the question: are there any abiding, permanent principles of architecture? The principles that will generate architecture. And I thought, well, why not turn this around? Which principles or actions will generate can sorry, which architectural artifact will produce the effect of a principle or a law? Well, that was a wall. And I thought, yeah, the primitive people had no walls. They were just wandering around. And when you start to build walls and frontiers, you start to have conflicts and claims and divisions. And the whole of modern civilization is this negotiation about walls.
Yes.
Uh, so that was what it was about. But then I also started from this an interest in people who somehow try to escape from walls or ignore the walls
So
or get
basically, it's
on.
like a philosophical work, neither
Oh yeah, very much.
publication based on architectures. So
Yeah. So I got interested in the idea of wanderers, the wanderer, um, which is a huge theme in Romantic poetry, especially in German and in English. Um, and I began to write a history of wanderers. And then I thought about a phenomenon in modern architecture, which is called the open plan. And this is if you know the Barcelona Pavilion, the work of Mies van der Rohe, this is a form of plan where there's no walls like that. All the walls are moved apart like that. Can you see what I'm saying? Which is a utopian idea of space, continuous movement. Of course, it's a crazy plan, crazy idea. How can you do this? There's no security. It's drafty. If it gets cold, the wind blows through. But it was a utopia. Um, and I've been working on this idea for a long time now. About the,
So
and I,
what's the conclusions you've made?
I have no conclusion except that I want to write some kind of history of it, collect all the papers I've got together on it. Um, I could send you them, maybe, and you'd have some idea. Um, and I found this theme of the wanderer very universal. Poets and writers who wander around.
How do you understand this idea? What is a wonder?
The main thing to think about a wanderer is that it's a very modern idea, not simply a nomad. People always think, oh, wanderers are nomad. No, the nomads are not wanderers because they live in a very set landscape. For instance, let's say the Lap in Finland, up in the north, they move with the deer, yeah? But it's always the same land, going backwards and forwards, following the deer, where there's grass to feed. Or the Aborigine in Australia, they go around, they wander around in a particular land. It's um, nomads in the desert, um, likewise. Sometimes they run out of food and water, and then they raid in some local city, and everybody fears the nomad. But the nomad is not a wanderer. The wanderer is a modern person who is unhappy or dissatisfied with particular places and particular locations and definitions, and is alienated, and goes finding something. They don't even know really what they're trying to find. And
Am I understand this right? That it's like a collectival ego, wonder,
uh,
or not close?
no, the Swiss philosopher Rousseau is more or less the first to describe the Confessions of a Solitary Walker. It's a phenomenology of the imagination. What happens when you don't focus it exactly and you let it drift and you fall into a reverie, and then your eyes wander around, then your mind wanders around, and then your feet and legs start to wander around.